let's move on then to let's go out to the ball game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Which ball game? That's the question.
take me out to the ball game has a different meaning now for NYC because they have a lot more free time on their hands to watch these ball games.
Well, there are no more ball games. It's the off season.
I didn't say which ball game.
Okay. Sure.
They finished in 11th this season with 41 points, missing the playoffs for the first time since their inaugural season, to my understanding. So we ask, what went wrong in the first one? I think we're going to share. It took forever and a day to get a number 9 to the door. When the season started, we mentioned it, and it was very quite clear where there was a massive hole for New York City. It was roughly the size of Tati Castellanos, and it stood right at the top of their formation. They had no number 9. Gabe Segal came in with like 400 pro minutes in like a Bundesliga development league, and they're like, heck yeah, him and Tyus Magno in a false 9 inverted. Oh man, we're set. And then they only scored 26 goals before the League's Cup break. And then once it got out of League's Cup break, they got even colder, and they only scored 9 more times all season, and 3 of them came against Toronto. I think they're okay when they got Bakrar through the door. He looks capable of doing good things, but you need to put better players around him. And you needed to get him in sooner because he didn't have time to gel, and he was able to do things individually, but you could tell the link up wasn't there. And I know you actually probably watched him play. I'm sure he played in the last game. So it looks like they're in a better spot, but for this season, why they missed this season is because they didn't get anybody in on time. If they make that Bakrar move during preseason, I mean they're probably pushing for a home playoff game. But instead, they waited until League's Cup or a little bit before League's Cup, and he wasn't able to get his feet wet. And he scored a little bit, but not nearly enough to put them where they needed to be.
Yeah, I will be getting to that point shortly.
Oh, it's not your number 1.
I mean, I don't have it in a particular order, but
Oh, gotcha.
it is in there. So my first point for them is the exact same point that I made with Montreal. Lack of replacements. Across the season, they lost Tati officially, Sean Johnson, Cayennes, Morales for half the season, and Gabby Pereira, just to name a few. While some of these were free transfers, they still were able to get 25 million euros across the sales of Tati and Pereira. In the winter, when most of the players left, they spent a whopping 1.3 million euros. They tried the exact same method as Montreal by looking for bargains after they lost all of their key players, except there is one difference. This is even worse because you are backed by arguably the largest football organization in the world, and you only managed to spend 1.3 million of the 25 million that you made to make your replacements. I understand that there are some restrictions in this league and that their hands were kind of tied when it came to designated players because they already had 3, but it was proven midway through the season in the summer transfer window that they could bring in players. They just didn't do it at the start of the season, and I don't know why. I don't understand how they couldn't just use some of the connections from this massive football organization to add in the players that they needed. And exactly like I said, they were able to bring in Bakrar and Fernandez in the summer transfer window and actually help bolster the team a little bit in the attack. Problem is exactly as you said, it was just too late in the season at that point, and there just wasn't enough time for them to get comfortable in the system in the league and make a push for NYC. I completely agree with you. Had they done this at the start of the season, I think we're looking at a playoff team, but they didn't. And I guess a solution. You started to resolve the problem in the summer transfer window. Go finish the job in this winter transfer window and let the team mesh for a whole season.
I can't say too much on you're backed by a big group and you don't get anything from it because I mean that's been Red Bull for the last 5 years. So, but not this year.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
I've heard Forsberg's all but done. I think Galatsky's not coming. Um, another point for me was they had a second hole to fill. It was about the size of Sean Johnson, and it stood at the other end of the field. They didn't have a goalkeeper. I can't count the number of times Sean Johnson came up unbelievably massive for City over the past couple of years, keeping them in games, winning them games, earning them points, getting them higher up the table, just because of the way that he would come up big in clutch moments. When he left to join Toronto, they kept hold of Luis Barraza, who they traded up to get a few years back in the first round, and Matt Freese, who was an under-tested number 2 from Philly. Barraza got most of the reps for City this year and finished with a minus 3.1 PSXG plus minus, which is bottom 5 for all like consistent starting goalkeepers. A couple of them came in and had like 1 or 2 games and got destroyed. But for the consistent ones, it's Barraza, Jonathan Bond, Guzan, and Ilicic. So not a great look there. And then when I was watching, because I watch him, as well, he just made some silly, silly decisions and mistakes, like trying to play possession in a full press and then having it, taken off him and nearly going in the goal, or trying to play sweeper keeper and missing the ball, like just little things like that looked kind of silly. Freeze came in and looked to step up into that role pretty well. And I would expect that he comes in as GK1 next year in preseason. But the Johnson to Barraza drop cost them a lot this year, I think. I just think that they felt so safe with him back there that when Barraza came in, and he wasn't bad, by the way, but he just wasn't as good as Sean Johnson. I mean, I think I think, what was he, number 6 all time in PSXG plus minus or something like that, number 6, number 7 when we did our game yesterday. And you replace a guy who's got double digit PSXG plus minus in his career and go to minus 3.1. That's a big change, right? That's a big swing.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point to bring up.
Thanks.
I am going to tack on to your first point and talk about the lack of striker for them. I don't know if I have too much to add here, but I'll just go through what I have in my notes. But this feels exactly like Montreal. But when this team lost Tati and Hebert, there was no backup plan other than to try their hand at Magno at striker. And that plan very much did not work out. It took them until the halfway point of the season to finally bring in a proven striker to add to the mix. And I think he did a good job when he was brought in. But imagine if they had brought him in at the start of the season, as we talked about. You're probably looking at a playoff team. I mean, this team missed the playoffs by 2 points. I would find it hard to believe that Bakrar doesn't get them that extra win that they need. Instead, the top scorer for the team was a player that they sold in the summer transfer window, that being Gabby Pereira, who had 6 goals. And by the way, I completely agree with them selling him because they got like 10 million euros for it. It was probably a worthwhile deal. But the solution's pretty simple. You just let Bakrar cook next year. Give him he's now got a full offseason under his belt. He's got half a season to kind of learn the league a little bit. He's got good attacking players around him. I think he just needs the time now to get a full season under his belt. And if he continues to play at the level of production he showed in the little time he was here, I think they'll be just fine as striker.
Yeah. Did he play when you were there?
Yeah, he started.
Was he good? Did you like what he saw?
He was a little non-existent. Granted, the team just didn't look great attacking that day. It took a Fernandez banger to win the game for them.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I want to get into like next year. I don't know if I want to do as much 360 as I do just picking a game and watching it, so I can get a little bit more like knowledge about the team. Maybe I have like 360 on my laptop and then watch the game. But the last one for me is head coach and lacking new ideas, right? So Patrick Vieira, Dome Torrent, Ronnie Dyla, they've always had somebody who could make it work and deliver results. I mean, Ronnie Dyla came out and was like, y'all didn't give me enough money or players to do anything this year. We're going to get killed. And then he won the cup. Like, people have had not great teams before and made it work. Cushing took over full time this season, put up a 1.16 points per game. And he had 1.4 in his caretaker after Dyla left last season. He didn't motivate the team at all, even in derby matches. I mean, they were just boring. And whenever you talk about coaches on the hot seat, I know we've lost 11 of them already, but people keep thinking he's supposed to be next. I think it's harsh to kick him to the curb without giving him half a season with the better signings. I don't know if he controls who comes in, who comes out. But like we mentioned, the team had a bunch of holes that weren't really filled well. And if you can fill them and then give him another half a season to see what he can do, that's probably the right way to do it. But Montreal didn't wait, so we'll see what City Football Group does, because at the end of the day, it seemed like the team kind of quit on him. And I know people want him gone for that exact reason. And it'll be interesting to see if he sticks around and how long he sticks around in the next year, if that's so.
My last point, and I think this will be a fun one for you because you love this. No home stadium.
Nice.
So I know this is a running joke in the league at this point, but I truly must imagine that having at least 3 different home stadiums this year had to have some effect on the team. Somehow it felt like their lack of home stadium this season was even worse than it was in prior years. They finished with an 8-3-6 record at home, which, don't get me wrong, is not too bad, but it was worse than all teams that made the playoffs outright. I went, as you kind of mentioned just before, I went to the last home game of the season, and honestly, the crowd was pretty dead. Some of that, I mean, they were still technically in the playoff chase at that point. It wasn't like they were eliminated. The supporters section at the game was tiny, and it was shoved into the corner of the stadium. Compared with the Seattle supporters section, which was very obvious where they were, it was a large crowd and they were loud the whole game. I think it's hard to develop a consistent fan base when you're constantly moving around. And for those outside of the metro area, while all stadiums are relatively close to New York City, they all will bring in different crowds. Red Bull Arena brings New Jersey, Yankee Stadium brings New York City, and Citi Field will bring Long Island. The solution, it's already in progress. Hopefully New York City will finally get a proper home stadium. The only thing they need to do now is just please see it out.
I'll tell you, that's the only thing that we like joking and poking fun at, oh, you don't have a stadium, you have a stadium. For the sake of the league, we got to get these guys into a real home. Like, this is terrible.
I agree.
Yeah, it's just, and I think it's a really valid point, right? Like, when your home games are spread between 3 different fields and they're all different sizes and different, turfs and different things like that, your consistency goes out the door. So,
Yeah,
don't
hard to
get me
get
wrong.
comfortable.
For now, love it. Let them continue to struggle. Don't care, but it should eventually get better.
Yep.